thing that gets me up every morning is the ability to actually come to work, see patients, understand their needs, and try to do something about it. At the end of the day, if we do that for every patient that we see in the clinic, we are making the world a better place.
Arij is dynamic and full of energy, and probably the most compassionate person I have ever worked with in my entire life.
I love working with Dr. El-Jawari. She cares so much about each and every patient, every person who's important to that patient, and thinks creatively about how we can make a treatment like this that's very demanding, actually accessible and potentially curative for people who may be turned away somewhere else.
Dr. El-Jawari and her team take an approach that's not, can we transplant this patient, to how can we transplant this patient? And just shifting that question has enabled them to think creatively about what they can put in place for patients to make them appropriate or make them eligible or make their transplant safe.
The goal of the Reimagining Caregiving Together initiative is really to change the paradigm, shift the paradigm of thinking from our traditional thinking about transplant to asking the question, how do we offer safe transplant and how do we actually help patients and families get through transplant with the resources that they have and with the support of the healthcare team.
Having a transplant is a life disruptor. Patients often cannot work. Patients often are struggling to pay the bills or even have food, much less afford an Uber to come to the hospital. If you know you can potentially help this patient with this condition, but they don't have a caregiver, or they don't have the means to have rides, or they don't have a cell phone, they don't speak the language.
We got to figure it out, and we do, and thankfully Arij is the person who's willing to try a lot of different things.
The reality is that for patients who cannot fulfill the traditional 100-day, 24/7 caregiver requirement, is that they will not move forward with a curative therapy. Dr. El-Jawari and her team are doing everything that they can to allow more patients to move through the transplant process that maybe otherwise would not have been able to.
We can actually do transplant safely in patients with limited social support with more psychosocial complexity. For example, we see our patients weekly in clinic post-transplant. But if you cannot drive, if you don't have somebody to drive you, we need to figure out a way to get them here. And so we at Mass General invested in an Uber Health program raised solely by philanthropy, so that for our patients who cannot get a ride here physically, we actually can get them a ride to come here.
That whole team's devotion to patient care is incredible, and it's been a sight to behold.
I think this award means it proves that it can be done, and it validates all the work that everybody has put forth.
For the majority of our patients, we can actually give them a chance at a life, and that's all they're asking for, is a chance at a life. And that, to me, is really what matters.